Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to go over page 236 to 238 notes, and you guys can just copy them down into your notebook and answer some questions. That's today's assignment. All right. So we've been talking about geologic history, and what we're going to be looking at today is just how do we date rocks and different methods of dating. Okay, so there's two types of dating. There's relative dating and absolute dating. When we date something relative, we're just placing events in proper order. Okay, we're not actually giving a number to the event. We're just saying the solar system formed before the Earth, right? Or, for example, I was born before you guys. I'm not putting in an age there. We're just saying something is older than something else. With absolute dating, and we talked about radioactive decay, this refers to the exact number of years that something actually happened. For example, I graduated high school in 2000, and Mr. Stuccio graduated high school in 1991. I don't really know if she did or not, but I'm just taking a guess there. Okay, now to determine relative age, we got to really examine and analyze the rock layers, and there's some rules that we got to abide by when we're looking at relative age. For absolute age, we use radioactive decay to get an actual number. So the first rule for determining sequence or relative age is called original horizontality. This states that all sedimentary rock layers form in horizontal layers on the bottom of the ocean. Okay, and if they form in horizontal layers, the law of superposition then would state, and this is an important word here, I'm going to highlight it, that the oldest rock layers would be on the bottom. And the younger rock layers would be on the top or above them. Okay, think about if you were making pancakes, right? Okay, if you take a pancake off of the griddle, the oldest pancake, and you start stacking them, you would put it one on top of the other, right? The oldest pancake would be the first that you took off, so the oldest pancake would be on the bottom. That was the first one to form, and then the last one to form, the youngest, would be on the top. Okay, so when we look at this rock layer here in picture A, the older rock layers are on the bottom. The youngest rock layers are sitting on top of them. Okay, now since all sedimentary rock forms originally in horizontal layers, that means anytime they are disturbed, that event had to have happened after the fact. Okay, so any cross-cutting event, a fold, a fault, an intrusion, extrusion, must be younger than the rock it cuts across. Okay, so in this first example here, we're looking at a fault. Okay, a fault is when one side of the rock layers slip up or the other side slides down, caused usually by an earthquake. Okay, and then the rock layer is no longer aligned and they're no longer horizontal. Okay, the fault had to have happened after the rock layers formed. Okay, so that means the fault is younger than those formation of those rock layers. Here in this example, we have a fold. Okay, folds happen when you take rock layers and they literally fold over just like that. Now you have the oldest rocks on the bottom, but you could also have the oldest rocks on the top. Okay, this would be something where it's completely overturned. And you would find this mountains are being built and tectonic plates are colliding. Okay. Now, two things that we need to be able to distinguish between is an intrusion and an igneous extrusion. During an igneous intrusion, okay, if we look at rock layers A, B, and C, you would assume that C is the oldest because it's on the bottom. BA would be the second oldest. And in this case, B is the youngest. Now, how do we know that? B is in between A and C. How is it younger than A? Okay, and what we got to look at is this little symbol here that goes borders between A, B, and C. That little symbol is contact metamorphism. Okay, that is telling us that the magma that formed layer B made contact with layer A and layer C. Okay, and the fact that it made contact with letter A tells us that A had to be there before B ever formed. Okay, and we know that this is an intrusion. An intrusion means it formed inside the Earth. Formed underground because you got the contact boundary between all of these layers. Okay, so the fact that we have contact metamorphism between all of the layers tells us that that's an igneous intrusion and that B has to be the youngest layer. Now, how is the extrusion diagram? How is this different? Okay, we look at the basalt layer here and we notice that, hey, do you have the contact metamorphism down here? Where I'm highlighting in yellow, but up here in green, it's missing. There's no contact metamorphism between the shale and the basalt. So what does that tell us? That tells me that the basalt is older than that shale layer on top. Because if the shale layer was older, you would expect to find contact metamorphism where I highlighted in green at that boundary. So in this scenario, where there's an extrusion, the limestone's the oldest. I'm just going to write 1 for the oldest. The sandstone is second. The basalt's third. And the shale is the fourth, or the youngest. And in this example, there's no contact metamorphism between those two layers. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to compare an intrusion versus faulting and try to get the relative age. Okay, so if you notice in this first diagram, we have our fault XY, and then we have intrusion E. And if you notice in this diagram, we have fault XY, and we have the intrusion right here. I'll go over in all red. Okay, and the main difference between the two is that in diagram 1, the intrusion E is not broken apart. In diagram 2, this intrusion here has been split apart or faulted. Okay, so in this scenario, the fault is older than the intrusion, right? Because the intrusion has not been faulted. In this scenario, in diagram 2, it's the opposite. The intrusion is older than the fault. And that's because the intrusion has been faulted. Okay, and then the last one, we're going to talk about is just a sedimentary rock conglomerate, right? If we take a look at the conglomerate as a whole, the pebbles and the sand particles that make up the conglomerate, that's the oldest part of the rock. Remember, conglomerate is a sedimentary rock made up of different rock sediment. So those rock sediments, right, the pebbles and sands, are older than the actual rock itself. Okay, the actual rock, right, is younger than the actual sand and pebbles that make it up. And then the youngest event would be the cracks in the rock. In this example. So that is our lesson. That is our lesson on interpreting rock layers. And we're going to get more in depth as we go along, but I just like to introduce a little at a time. All right. If you have any questions, reach out on Teams. Make sure you copy these notes down and you do the questions that follow. Have a nice day.